bust 'em out.
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Rewire, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. To you here in YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you are catching us at, welcome to the conversation tonight. I am Tawami Daddy. Here I've been dubbed as the son of Timothy, also known as the Available Man. With me, I got my big brother, you know, the man, the myth, the legend, the king on the wax, you know, with bumping the tracks, Mr. Poor Man's Dr. Field, also known as Shift Happens. And next to me, I got our big brother, our coach, our visionary. I was trying to remember everything he said in the intro. But Dwayne Rewire, we know him as the Mindset Coach. With all the intros out the way, how are you brothers doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. Still got the itis from yesterday and today, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I'm good, man. All is well. Enjoyed spending time with family and, you know, catching up and just sitting around a fellowship. That's always a plus. But, you know, as always, I enjoy being on here on Friday nights and spending time with my brothers and having these amazing conversations. So, yeah, I'm good. All is well.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's shout out to the livest chat out here in these YouTube streets. Starting at the top, I'll see it says the rebirth of Nick D. She's rocking with us this evening. Crystal Lynn, 970. Who else we got? We got Keys to Key Realty. Welcome, sis. Charlotte Jordan, always good to see you. His divine appointment, good to see you, big sis. Who else we got in the building? If I do not see you, who is that? R Robin Bauer or RBN Bauer? Good to see you. I don't know why every time I see it, I want to say Robin. If you are tuning in and I have not called you out because we don't see you in the chat, that's fine. Go ahead and get in the chat, say good evening, interact into the conversation. It goes down in the chat during these conversations, so you want to be tuned in to what's going on in there. So it is rock. Man, I'm good sometimes. So with that said, tonight's conversation, it is rewired your past in 7 days. A science-backed hack to erasing painful memories. Right? Um, I know we live we live in this life and we live in this world, and things happen. Some good, some bad, and some of these things sometimes weigh on us as we journey through life. You know, our decision making, our relationships, you know, our abilities to cope in certain scenarios are all shaped by either lessons that we've learned, experiences we've gone through, and maybe trauma that has been endured. I know that this is a reality for many. And so with that, today we're going to talk about how can we rewire those memories, right? Though there is no hack to completely erase memory, we will explore patterns and processes to weaken, suppress, or modify the emotional impact these memories have on your life. So, with that said, we're gonna go ahead and get into this conversation. Um, and just a general, brothers, when you hear a term like rewire your past, what is your initial thought that comes to your mind?
I think when I think of rewiring, I think of not acting as if it's not there, but taking things that happened in the past and change how they control you now. Because there are some things that could have happened, and that very well could be true. But sometimes we can keep ourselves in a certain place mentally, even physically, to keep us in that place where it hinders us from moving forward where we are now.
Yeah, I would say that there is a pre-existing conditioning that may be interfering with the way that a person is trying to live their life or experience life and so forth and so on. And the unfortunate part of that pre-existing conditioning, it is responsible for the outcomes that you are receiving. So going back to rewire those pre-existing conditionings, it can be frustrating. It can be joyous. It depends on the person that you're dealing with. So yeah, that's kind of like what I say to that.
I love it. I echo everything that my brothers just say. When I first saw the topic, you know, kind of threw me back a bit. But you know, when I'm thinking about, it, I'm like rewire, you know, your past, and then it set me right there, like how I view those experiences, not necessarily how those experiences actually took place, um, and seeing things through a different light. So, with that said, there are three techniques that I found scientifically proven techniques. They said that actually affects this process. The first one is a reconciliation interference technique, right? Modifying established emotional memories. So this technique states that memory is not fixed. Every time you retrieve a memory, your brain temporarily unstabilizes it. This is the process called reconciliation, right? Um, so with that said, first question, brothers, what would you say the initial reaction would be when a person or yourself were asked to recall a traumatic memory?
Generally, when a person is asked to recall a traumatic memory, they recall it through the lens of the emotional experience that they had. They recall the things that they remember. It does not necessarily recall the entirety of what actually happened. They recall the emotions that they have in relation to it. And unfortunately, depending upon who that person is and where they are in it, they sometimes get to the point of reliving that same pain that they experienced from the past, especially if they've never done the work to overcome that particular event. So it's a very slippery slope, and I think sometimes, and I've said this time and time again, I believe a lot of times when we share our stories, that's what we're doing. We're sharing our stories from the lens of the through the lens of the traumatic emotional experience, and not necessarily through the lens of the authentic truth of everything that happened in that particular scenario.
I think initial reaction is just what Coach was saying, because we will, it's just like anything else. You look to the lowest or highest points of whatever has happened, and you make it all about that portion of it, not thinking about the intricate pieces, but you go to the drastic changes, the drastic highs and drastic lows, which were so impactful to you. And those are the things that we tend to hold on to, so it's easily accessible when asked.
Yeah, I'm right there. Especially how Coach started. It's the initial aspect of reliving the experience, and you can kind of see it. Especially people who are more passionate, you can kind of see them relive the experience as they tell the story. The hand gestures, the body movements, the getting it. Yeah, because I remember, and you can see more than just recalling the what, but recalling the experience, and you can see it come through them in expression. I see that a lot in this study. It kind of tells us that when that memory is recalled, it enters back into that stabilizing period, right? Um, and in that stabilizing period, that's when you can begin to interfere the reaction to the moment. Um, and I just wanted to point that out. That was something that I saw. So I think that's interesting to put in our memory bank as we move forward. Let me see. With that said, let's go to the scenario real quick. Scenario number uno. All right. So Michael and Lisa was out in a restaurant back in 1994. Pick the year, right? In Indiana. Lisa requested that they go and eat at an old favorite spot of hers growing up. So, due to the racial nature of this couple, they were not given really good service. The experience was tough to the point that they ended up going home, and Lisa began to cook at home. That became her routine. So they eventually fell in love, right? But Lisa was traumatized by this encounter because it was something she didn't see often. So when they were not traveling, she would only cook at home. So they never felt that same experience again that they felt at that restaurant. Um, and I hope everybody here knows who Michael and Lisa is. Uh, I was about to say something. You don't know? Coach, you have to get to your Googles. Uh, but with that scenario in mind, let's go to the first question, or the second question. Right after recalling this painful moment, how would you advise Lisa to rewrite this memory before it's restored?
Is this Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley? Uh, I'm a little lost on the Michael and Lisa. I thought it was just made up people myself. So me and
Well,
Coach, I guess,
all
on the
my
same.
scenarios, I pull somebody, pop culture. I don't know.
But how would I advise Lisa to rewrite the memory? I think she would have to sit down and not just go by, because she got another person that was there also. So it's two people that can have a conversation about what was going on at the time, what was happening, and just me. I would have her journal it. Start with a journal, write it down, say what was. That way it's uninterrupted. It's her thoughts coming out of her mind onto her piece of paper. So I can't make it anything other than what she sees in her head. So I would have her journal it and see how she feels in the moment and whatnot, so that we can go from there.
Yeah, it's of course with these conversations, it's very slippery slope. Number one, I wouldn't advise Lisa unless she came to sought assistance or aid with it. That's for starters. I think a lot of times people give unsolicited advice as though they're experts, and in most cases they're really not. But after her soliciting some help with this particular scenario, I would try to help her to reframe it by first, let's identify the facts, like what actually happened, not how you feel about what happened yet, but what actually happened, both her and Michael together. Tell Michael he can't do no he's in this conversation either. But just let's identify the facts. And then after identify the facts, sure, we acknowledge how she feels, right? And what people have to realize, the acknowledgement of how the person feels is for them. Like I'll say it again, it's for them, not for the sake of that is reality, right? It's their reality. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? Once we acknowledge how she feels, then we can like reframe it to, instead of focusing on what actually happened, focus on the resiliency that they potentially shared in the midst of the situation, how they were there to ensure that they maintain their I don't know, I want to say professionalism, but this isn't a professional setting, but maintain their character in the midst of a situation. So that's kind of like how I would start off with that.
Absolutely. Reading back through this, for me, just kind of where you were at when it comes to kind of reframing, right? Let's focus on the facts. But for me, I'm looking at the residual facts, right? You begin to cook more often at home. To me, I believe that opportunity to eat together at home at the table is a bonding experience. It's a, it's a way for bonds to grow stronger in relationships and in families. So I look at it that way. Yes, this was unfortunate, but it caused you and Michael to fall in love, caused y'all, to bear children and what have you. So the old saying, all of us soldiers up here, for those who aren't, I think you'll get the saying, hunt the good stuff, right? Because when you recall the experience, and it says that it neutralizes it, so it doesn't automatically reattach your emotional response to it, because once you relive it or once you express it, it hits a neutral state, and now now you can now interject where you want to go with it. And for me, I would go with, yes, we've endured that and we became stronger. We didn't break, we didn't fall, we didn't fold, we didn't succumb to what other people wanted from us because, we don't look the same or what have you. That's kind of where I am with that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a slippery slope for me. To take that mindset almost is like, it happened, and just like look past it. Look, that was them. That's not everybody, and that gives you the little niceties that you may have and may want to move forward in society. But it also can make you naive. It also can put you in dangerous situation where you think, well, oh, everybody ain't like that, and then your guards are down.
So that is true, and I think that's the point of recognizing and acknowledging how that situation made them feel, right? I'm sorry, made Lisa feel, not them. You recognize and acknowledge how it made her feel, and then from there you can move on to the resiliency that they've experienced in that moment, right? And then that's the part where you can look at the result, to what Gaddy was saying. But you're absolutely right. You don't just like wash the whole thing away as though it never happened. That's the key behind acknowledging how the person feel. But if you never acknowledge how the person feel, if you go from let's look at the facts, okay, what's the lesson learned? then it almost like disassociates the person from the event. And it's not that the event didn't happen, but the key is to recognize you're stronger than the event. So now this was the end state. This was, and it's not that you should fear going to restaurants. You may not want to go to that restaurant again moving forward. But what the key is, the idea is not for the person to create an event or traumatic event that is centered around eating out. And then they get to the point of never eating out again, kind of like some people are experiencing right now on the backside of COVID.
Right. I remember an experience when I was PCSing from Jackson the Hood. I didn't know nothing about the South. I knew, stories. I've heard people talk. I knew some history, right? But I've never experienced anything other than South Carolina at this moment, right? Been to Georgia a couple of times, at some parties, did some stuff. But other than that, I didn't know much. Yeah, I didn't say it was a good experience or good parties. You can take the hat off. No, but
hey, that's your traumatic experience. My bad.
Right. So, but I remember pulling over at this gas station, and I'm all of 22 years old. This guy come out. He's only like 2-3 pumps, and we in Mississippi, and this dark is all get up. But I know I ain't had no gas, and I needed some because it said after that it said next gas station 30 something miles. I was like, well, I don't know. Hey, AG lead the way. 290 right. Don't hate, coach. Don't hate. So this man gets to my car. He go, hey, sir, I think you got enough to get down the road. He's going to keep driving. I'm like, at first, like it didn't click. So I'm like, what? And I see these headlights go off. Come on. I was like, so he said 35 miles? 35. So I beat feet down the road. Because in my mind, I didn't think I had enough gas. But when it really clicked what this man was saying, deuces. So I'm not scared to getting gas. Kind of like to where you're saying, right? So my lesson learned was to pay attention to where I stop. Right? I like to drive through the night if I'm gonna go long distance. That's just me. But 9 times out of 10, I know my routes. I know where I'm going to stop at. I know where I'm going. Attention. I'm like, ain't nothing going on over there, right? If there's nothing going on over there, there's no lights, and I don't see no people, especially no people that look like me. May not be bad, but I'm gonna keep on riding. But that's my lesson learned. I don't know if that's kind of where you were going with it, bro.
Oh yeah, that's because everyone should have a semblance of situational awareness, even when we go through things. And I think sometimes an event can be made more than what it is by the psyche of the person. So yeah, y'all.
Hey, coach, listen. You remember back in the day? Both of y'all remember back in the day when you used to have to go to what was that link we had to go to? The ArmyRiskAssessment.com. I had my route mapped out. I had my breaking points and all that other stuff mapped out. But they didn't tell me right then there's a little city right off in the middle of Mississippi. I don't care how much gas you got, get through there with a prayer. But I didn't know. It just said that this was around the best time to stop. And that was just a gas station I saw. I was scared to run out of gas. So I did my little trip assessment.
When I left my house, I would leave my house at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I make my way to I-10 and travel east on I-10. When I got to the Mississippi River, that big old bridge,
yeah,
that's where I made my gas stop, my food stop, and everything right there. Because once we crossed that bridge, we riding.
I hear that. Hey, it's crazy that all of us remember that same route. Man, I'm trying to look and see if we got something good. All right. So until this year, Ooh. Yeah. Listen, I don't even want to harken that, but I just want to put this out there. Can we bring up Miss Robin real quick? I learned about it many years ago, but just so people know, when you driving through the South, you can somebody put a PDF or PDF book that you can probably download now or print out. But there's a thing where they have maps of sundown towns for each state. They still exist. I know a lot of people try to act like we don't live in those times or what have you. And this is not to fear bait or anything like that. But if you can if you can look that book up and download it, right? It's like the green, yeah. And so you download that book so if you travel through the South, you know, just go ahead and have that handy.
See, you keep saying the South. It's not just the South, because I'm from northern Mississippi, Michigan, where it's the same. It's the same. It's a mentality. It's not a place. It's a mentality, and it's not everyone, but it's certain areas, and it's everywhere because of where we are. But like you said, we don't want to make people afraid of traveling and things. Just be cognizant of where you are and your surroundings.
Right. Right. Be wise as a serpent, but as gentle as a dove. But that don't mean be afraid. Yes, I do agree, Sister Lisa. Let's moving on to the next technique. This one is called extinction learning. This does not erase the memory itself, but it removes the fear response that memory triggers. This study says that repeat exposure to the initial trauma experience without the negative consequences can exterminate the fear attached to it. Let's go to this scenario real quick. Or is it with if you're familiar with it? Do anybody have any add-ons or take away from? You understand that definition?
Yeah, when I was still in and went through certain PTSD, I think they just call it PSD, whatever they call it now. But you know what I'm talking about. Trainings and with the therapy sessions and the everything, that's one of the things that they did, the whole exposure thing. Talk about it, write it down, listen to it. And I think it's a partial truth, but I think it's kind of limited also. I think that it's one of those things where it's not a one for all. It's not like that. But I think that when the government found something, they said, hey, we're going to run with this. And then it was all about that instead of doing its due diligence and seeing what was what. But it does have an effect, because certain things like that I did experience, I found that like being around certain things, it minimized the level of frustration, the level of anxiety that I had for that.
Yeah. So to your point, the prolonged exposures is what they called it, really, to where trying to reintegrate you back into normal society, behaving normal and not being standoffish and things of that nature. And the way it works is that they would tell you to go like to a particular place, let's just say the mall or something of that nature, and you stay in the mall and see how long you can stay. And they'll come up with a goal for you to stay like 30 minutes, right? That's the goal. But your first initial stint, you might be able to stay like a minute. Then you're like, this is too much, I gotta go. And so you're supposed to document that, right? Then you go back at a later point in time and do it again. You're supposed to document that. And so ideally, eventually you'll get to the point to where your time being able to stay in there is increased, because now you are recreating experiences to where you see that there was no threat. You went there, you was exposed to it, and then you left under your own recognizance. Like no one forced you to leave. There was nothing traumatic that actually happened. And to where behavioral science, although is a science, it's not as exact as most sciences. So it's comprised of a bunch of theories that come from a particular law. So sure, it's not going to work 100% of the time for the 100 people that they're testing it on. However, it may work 95%. It may work about 95% of the time for about 85 people. Well, if you can help 85 people overcome a traumatic event, that's success. So ideally, now you just got to find the next technique for those other 15 people that you can help. So that's just kind of like my response to like the process of extension.
I like that. I like all of that. Let's go to the scenario. Scenario number 2. Lisa ended up working through her trauma by using the reconsolidation interference techniques in therapy. And on her way home, she's on the phone with Michael so that they can plan a date night, right? She's ready to go out and hang out again, you know. And on her way home, a car pulls out and causes an accident, totaling a new car that Michael just bought her. So she was okay the rest of the day since Michael ended up driving, but she developed amaxophobia, which is fear of driving, causing her to eventually start working from home and avoiding going places alone so that she didn't have to drive. The question is there a point in Lisa's experience where exposure could end and begin the extermination of the fear of driving in this scenario? And my bad, I read that terribly. I'm gonna read it again. Is there a point in Lisa's experience where exposure could end and begin extermination of the fear of driving?
Y'all seen Top Cruise? Not Top Cruise, Top Gun? Y'all seen Top Gun? Get him back in the cockpit as soon as possible. The answer is yes. There is a point where it could end and begin the extermination of the fear, but we have to realize that the other person gets a vote, right? Just like when you looked at Top Gun and they was trying to get Maverick back in the cockpit, he was resisting it. He would take off, he'll start flying, and he wouldn't engage like he normally would. It's the exact same thing. When you look at the person, and I don't know the extent of what she's seen in the accident, that could probably be a large a part of it as well, because of how much she's seen and the result of what she's seen. That's why most police officers and EMS workers try to keep everybody else back as far away from the scene itself. But yes, get back in the cockpit, get back to doing the thing that you were accustomed to doing, because ideally in doing that, you recall those old memories that you had in the normal operation of the thing that you're accustomed to doing.
I'm about tired of Lisa. No, let me stop. Lisa is a little too sensitive for me. But is there a point that Lisa's experience where exposure could be and begin? Yes. I don't know. I think that as mere people and mere adults, I can't tell somebody what experience should be to them, but I think a sense of reality has to be in us all. So if my reality is, I'm gonna crash every time, it's like you don't need to talk to me. You need to be talking to somebody with a couple more degrees, some letters behind their name. So
I think, if I may, I think also this is probably more common than we ever could imagine. Look at how many accidents actually happen just within a year. Some people lose their loved ones, and some of these kids, man, they get in them cars and they get on the interstate and they want to do 100, 100 plus, and then they get in an accident. And trust me, that accident is severe. It's not like a fender bender. it's like at that speed, and I'm telling you this based upon something that I know happened to a family member. And this didn't happen to him, but the cop actually said that in that scenario, like they were fortunate to not be wearing a seatbelt, because at that speed, that seatbelt would have done more damage than it did good. So just like imagine if that was the case, and her mother showed up on the scene and witnessed and seen what, because eventually you're going to have to show them to the mom's going to have to see it, right? Now imagine the end result of that, or say for example, she survived that accident, but then the secondary and tertiary effects behind it. So this is actually more common than most people care to realize, and a lot of times we're not necessarily equipped to help a person who is going through something of that nature, and we can be at times become a little insensitive to like what that person recalling, because that's a lot of times what people do. They recall the situation. They go back and they revisit the night when they seen that person, or the night when they seen the accident, or something of that magnitude. So I think when it comes down to stuff like this, being able to listen and hear what another person is saying, like I say, and not minimizing how they're feeling, hearing it, but understanding that that's the feeling that they associated with that event, then help them to get that back to the point to where they can normalize life. And maybe in this scenario, maybe it's going back to, as what we would call when we were younger, driver's training. Let's go on an old country road and get you behind the wheel and get you more confident. There's no cars out here, just me, you, in the woods, right? We're just gonna drive a little bit, and then stuff like that. So stuff like that really helps. I know it sounds kind of primitive when you're talking to full-grown adults who already got driver's license and things of that nature, and it may seem excessive, but you'll be surprised how far that actually go to help that person.
And I experienced something like this with my truck. When a couple of years ago, a woman T-boned me. I was driving down Hood Street, whatever you want to call it. And I'm looking at the lady. I'm like, I know she ain't coming through that stop sign. She came through the stop sign. She went around the car. I tried to speed up, and she hit me and all the airbags, and I spun around, all that other stuff. And every time I go down that street, it was like, I'm looking. It's like, okay, I'm looking. I'm checking to see, make sure ain't nothing coming from over there. Because I'm like, okay, this is where it happened. But it was never debilitating or anything like that. Some people it may be. Said it totaled her car, totaled mine too. But some people's mental is already set on a path to hold things in a grand scale when they should let them go.
So Nick D makes a point, right? She says, if we could bring up her comment, she says, I can imagine that developing a crippling fear of something would make it extremely difficult to try it again. On the flip side, we are not created to live in fear, so she could start with unpopulated area, and that's what Coach was saying. So I agree there, but on that first part, I have a question. How would you convince? And even Lisa in the comments, who convinced you? How were you convinced to get back in the car, or how would you convince someone to get back after 5 years of fear keeping you from getting behind the wheel? How would that process look for you when you getting that person back behind the wheel?
I think kind of like what I just said previously, right? There will be conversations, right? Getting them to kind of remember what it was like to be autonomous, to, go to the store on your own, go hang out with your girlfriends or whatever that looks like, right? Because trust me, at a certain point, cabin fever is going to kick in. You're going to get tired of sitting in the house. You're going to get tired of looking at these four walls. Ain't so much TV you can watch. And so, it is what it is. And so in some instances, we could just be in the car and I'm actually driving. And then, I go to a particular area to where we know there are no cars being intruded, and say, hey, would you like to try just for a short distance? We don't have to leave this area. Just do a couple of laps around the parking lot or, down the road or whatever. That way you're kind of comforting them into it. but not necessarily forcing them to do it. Right. Again, it's them that have to make the decision to move forward. You know, but the other side of that, if they're rejected, then you're going to have to be okay with them rejecting it at that stage. But the key for you was to not give up, you know, keep affording them the opportunity to move outside of that. And then once they do the first time, just kind of keep repeating the process. And then, like I said, over a prolonged period of time, they'll get to the point to where they may just want to go to the corner store. And there may not be any, you know, cars in your neighborhood to go to the corner store and back, but that's fine. That's a start. And then, you know, I think you'll be surprised at what actually happens. Like we're pretty resilient people. You know, sometimes I think this fear, this debilitating fear that, you know, Nick D made mention of, I think it does not give yourself enough credit of the level of resiliency that you actually have.
Oh, I already answered that. Oh, you're talking about, yeah, we already went with Lisa then. I think it's a gradual thing. I think when you gradually, it's just like when we used to, and I'm going to be plain and earnest. When we used to take my grandma's car, we'd bag it up, we'd move it forward. Bag it up, move it forward. We took gradual steps. Then next thing you know, we was around the block. Next thing you know, we was in the neighborhood. Next thing you know, she was looking for her car. So I think when it comes to things like this, you got to gradually do it. You can't just, okay, jump out there and do it. And that's, I think sometimes the frustration of people and our insensitivities may come across as in, man, just do it. Because we think hey, we're in that situation, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So I think that is a insensitivity that needs to be checked on the other person's end. And so we can say, okay, let's take our time. Just sit in the car. Just get a feel for it and go from there.
And like I said earlier, you know, the other person has a say. So, you know, you can talk until you're blue in the face. If they're not ready to get in that car, they're not going to be ready to get in that car. I think one of the things Lisa said in her response was, you know, when I got ready, I got ready. You know, sometimes I think sometimes you got to be tired of not doing the thing because of the fear. And that's what I feel like she was at. She said there was a moment or a time where I said to myself, okay, I feel comfortable driving again. And I naturally begin to do it again. Like, I don't know. I feel like I would be tired of being stuck because I let something keep me captive. And so I would eventually got in the car. Like kind of like what you said. I probably wouldn't have went back and forth. I probably would have went to the corner store first, went to Dollar General and came back. You know, but eventually I would have to have taken that drive. And Lisa, let me ask you, because you said Marines. Were you in the Marines or was your husband in the Marines?
I think she was saying mine was after. I think Marine was a typo.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was like, I didn't know you was a Marine. Wait a minute.
And I know you remember that one guy. He had a fear of driving, and then his friend put a cooler in the car. I said, nah. You remember the movie, man. Go ahead.
And this is why we got points that we can move on to, you know. Man, I think I wouldn't drive ever again if I already had a fear. You do that. Okay, yeah, so that was a typo. Yeah. Because I was about to say, I knew you was bad, but okay. Right. Let me see. Going on to the next aspect or next question. Are there any responsibilities? Are there any responsibilities that you believe that Michael shares to assist Lisa through this process as her partner?
As a partner, I'd say patience. I would say a semblance of understanding. Yeah, I just start with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think along with patience and understanding, um, under and again, I can't remember if Michael and Lisa are married or not. But like I tend to say, her success is his success and his success is her success. So if she is handicapped in any way based upon some type of event that she experienced, then that's handicapping to him as well. And you have to see it that way. Because if you really want to be logical about it now in this particular state, anytime she wants to go someplace, you are now her chauffeur by de facto. So, and it's not that you don't want to be her chauffeur, but let's just be honest. There are times that you don't want to be her chauffeur. And then there are also times to where you have to realize that she may not necessarily want to be chauffeur, but because of this fear, you have to be the chauffeur. So yeah, there's a responsibility there. Not just the patience, not just the understanding, but the progressive nature of her deliverance also becomes a part of his responsibility simply because they're partners.
I like that. I like that. I think I'm right there. Someone said encouragement, right? And so with encouragement, I would say by way of expressed understanding, having understanding and actually expressing that is a different thing. Letting her know that reassurance, like, hey, it's all right, I got you when you ready. Because if she feels like she's being pushed in the car, she might regress. She might go backwards. She might not ever get in the car. Now you stuck. Drive. She waiting on you everywhere she got to go. So yes, let her know that hey, I get it. You might ask, you want to drive? No, I'm not ready. That's all right. When you're ready, you just let me know, and we'll start. We'll take baby steps. Talk her through. Letting your partner hear that you understand. I think that goes with that would help along the way when you actually begin to start to encourage them to get in the car. They'll trust getting in the car because they trust you through this process. I think we in this world that we live in, I think sometimes we discredit how much a partner can help us through traumatic events in life, especially when you know, like with the first scenario, you went through it with someone. I believe that will create, Lord, I believe that will create an opportunity for us to have something to talk about. You know, hey, and to get through that together. I know it didn't express that Michael felt some sort of way, but knowing we in this together, helps with the process of getting through it. If y'all
Uh,
do you agree with? Okay.
When it comes to the understanding piece, I think sometimes we can be lying to ourselves when we talk about understanding because, and I think a lot of people do that with the Kenya's unalive ones. I don't know. When your family pass away, I get sick of not framing words right on this thing. But when your family pass away and people be like, oh, I understand. No, you don't. So sometimes the honesty of not understanding, but having the empathy to go through with the person can help because I don't know what your relationship was like with that person. So I can't say, I feel you, I understand you. Even if my same type of my mother, my father, whomever has passed, I don't know your relationship with yours. I don't know what that was like. So I don't know what you're going through. So I can't understand it. Now, when it comes to this accident, it wasn't me, it was you. You went through it. So I can say I understand because I'm trying to push you through. So then I'm starting to gaslight and all this other stuff to get you to do what I want you to do naturally.
yes. Yeah, I can see that. The part I was going to add was in relation to um, what it looks like when a person is trying to overcome something like this. And then you experience frustrations in the midst of them trying to overcome it because they're not necessarily overcoming it at the rate that you believe that they should be overcoming that thing. Um, let's be honest, it can be frustrating. I think that's important. for everybody to recognize. But that person that's going through it, they may not recognize how frustrating it can be to their partner. I don't care who you are. When you get of a certain age, you're going to end up depending on somebody. And trust me, and I think some of us may have already experienced it when you had to take care of, you know, Pawpaw and, you know, Big Mama or whatever that looked like. Um, Even though there is joy in doing so, there are times that you may experience some frustration. You got to be careful not to impose those frustrations on that person during that particular point in time. Now, there's also a certain point where there becomes a level of dependency as well. So now you have another slippery slope you have to be careful of. At what point does me doing what I'm doing for you in this particular scenario, me becoming your chauffeur until you get to the point that you feel like you're ready to drive, at what point is it more of a dependency thing as instead of a progression thing? So I think before situations like this start, and I'm glad we start talking about relationships. I think before situations like this happen, there has to be an establishment of what a relationship looks like to where we can have these honest bouts of communication. And I think too many times we create this scenario to where honesty in relationship is not necessarily warranted, even though we say that's what we want, until somebody decides to be 100% honest with you. And then you start, you know, acting a particular type of way or whatever the case may be. So the question has to become, do you really want a healthy relationship, or do you just want the relationship of your dreams, which equates to some type of fantasy world? Because when this happens over here, and that's either coming with age or, you know, a traumatic event, and that other person needs you, can you be there for that person? And by that same token, express the patience, express the empathy, minimizing the fact that at times you're going to be frustrated, but recognizing taking care of them is a little bit more important than your frustrations at this particular point in time, and have a healthy outlet to where you can express those frustrations, but don't make them feel bad about what they're going through. My mic is on the stand. I couldn't drop it.
I thought Rose was coming back. And I think when we're in this conversation, we got to understand, you know, especially in a discussion piece, the point is getting to the fix and not focusing on the brokenness, right? So when we're talking about it, you know, even from the relationship aspect point to the trauma aspect point, we got to get in the mindset of how do we take this information and implant it to make better, and not hawk on the broken, because that's how we stay stuck, you know. But with love, of course, because we want this to be progressive. So when we're talking about relationships, it become that and let's be honest, relationships become a trauma in today's world in and of itself, you know. So when we start talking about how do we assist one another, you know, getting through traumas as partners, even if the partner is not your lover, the partner can be some friends that partner with you to help you through this. You know, it could be, you know, a parent, a sibling. So, but I'm looking at it from the aspect of how do I receive that support, and so that's where I feel like it gets hard. You know, I remember growing up, I went through some stuff, and my cousin tried to help me, and to be honest with me and my cousin, we didn't grow up together. She's a little bit older than me. Her mother was my mother's sister, but she grew up for the most part with her father. So we didn't really have that close relationship till we became adults. I joined the Army. I saw her in the Army, you know, so I saw it was possible, so I did it. So it was hard for me to receive information concerning things I went through because I didn't know what she went through. you know, and it was hard to receive it. So I think the other side of this is making sure that we put ourselves in a position that we can receive that love and that support from our community. I mean, I'm gonna take Lisa's word, you know, from our community. Uh, yeah, absolutely, Lisa. We are one. We are one. That's what he called us to be. Um, let's go to the next the next process. This one is called cognitive reappraisal, right? This is the conscious psychological technique used to change the emotional meaning of a memory. Um, this study states that you can consciously reinterpret an emotion stimulus. Instead of reacting emotionally to a painful event, you could use factual and objective aspects. Um, so far, what are your thoughts just on the definition? Has everybody here heard of cognitive reprisal? Good. So let's jump into the first question on this topic. So by reframing statements like "Why did this happen to me?" with "What did I learn?" Uh, how can that have an impact on a traumatic stimulation? Just looked it up.
I think in all things, certain people are trained already to go back and see how you can grow from experiences, and certain people just have to go through the experience and learn from them, you know, by hook or by crook. I think that with this, when we reframe it, we're looking at it as, okay, something could have happened, but don't personalize it. Some things we can personalize, like, oh man, this happened to me, and da da da. And what you're doing, you're starting to pile things onto yourself, and you're taking on weightier things than need be. Instead of saying, man, yeah, this happened and that happened, and leave things in their proper perspective. And I think a person that's trained in said areas can help you place things in proper areas where they need to be so that they aren't weighty on you, and you can actually handle piece by piece instead of trying to eat the whole elephant at once.
Yeah, I think what we have to understand is that we assign meaning to things that happen in our life. And a lot of times when we tell stories from one or two perspectives. Either we're the hero of that story or we're the victim of that story. When we get to the point of reframing it, um, rejecting the victim perspective, then we can get to the point of understanding what that situation could have taught me if I looked at it from that perspective. So it's like, instead of it happening to me, what is happening through me? Like, I give everybody a perfect example. You know, y'all remember years ago, it was a common thing to hear somebody say, it's the man that's holding me down. Okay. Now, of course, the proverbial man is ultimately the system. Is there a system in play? Sure, it is. But do I have to look at the system from the perspective of me being a victim to the system, or is there an alternative perspective that I can adopt and assign meaning to my life according to that? So then once that answer becomes yes to that person, because you get a right to answer the question however you want to answer it, right? Once the answer becomes yes to that person, then we can now open up doors of conversations about, regardless of the system, what can you do, right? What opportunities are available to you? Now you get into the problem solving aspect of your own reality, to where now you start seeing opportunities. So reframing is a very powerful tool. The problem here is that a lot of times, and you have to listen very closly, because people will tell you in no uncertain terms whether they are ready to reframe it or not. And that's the other side of it. Understanding when a person is ready to reframe is it takes a keen ear to hear it. And I have rejected people in the past, because in the initial Q&A, they were literally telling me that they were not ready to move on from this perceived event. And once I got that clarity from them, out of them, my next statement to them is that I can't help you. You need to go seek therapy, because that's what you want in this particular point in time. Now, alternatively, could they have opted to move forward? Sure. But they had assigned meaning to that event, and they wanted to talk about that event and how that event made them feel. And it's not that talking about the event and how the event made them feel wasn't available on this side. It's just that they weren't ready to come to the other side of it yet.
Man, y'all said a lot. I'm trying to, boy, y'all made that. Yeah, I agree. Lisa said it was good to her second or third. Yes, said in our current situation, we can look at the number of aspects that are impacting individuals as a whole, or you can reframe it and activate your faith by knowing and speaking. Although I hear what is being said in the environment, I don't adopt it or accept it, but I can continue to trust God, to trust in God, taught through His children, I believe.
I think we got the gist of it.
Yeah, I think that's what she's trying to.
Yeah.
No, what say you? I know that was a lot. That was a mouthful. Because I like something you said, Coach, but I want to pull this out because what you said leads into the next question. So
I think we do have to have a holistic approach. That's why we can't approach every situation the same, every person the same. So if you've gone through something, doesn't mean that I'm going to take it the same way. I'm going to handle it the same way. But I think sometimes that's what we do. We say, okay, I read this book and this says you should be here. That's what we used to do in the Army as medics. We used to have an algorithm. They say, yes, go here. They say, no, go there and whatnot. I think we try to treat people like that. And when you treat people like that, it's not treating the person, it's trying to treat every person as the person. So I think that when you look at who the person is, what the person's gone through, and not to break them down, because that you don't want to, somebody, that's what they told me one, I'm being funny when I say this, they told me, you therapize too much. I'm like, okay, I'm therapizing again then. Because I try to understand pieces. I ain't trying to break down the whole. I'm gonna break down this piece over here first and deal with that.
Yeah, but I believe that is a holistic approach. You know what I'm saying? But and going back to the example I used, sure, the system is there. We don't reject the fact that the system exists. We don't reject the fact that the system was not made for equality. We don't reject the fact that certain people get certain privileges that other people don't. We don't reject those at all. But then by that same token, going back to Lisa's point, why focus on that? Because that's what I gather when I read this. Although I hear what is being said in the environment, I don't adopt it or accept it, right? But I can continue to trust in God's, and I think she said that trust in what God taught His children, right? So it's not that those things aren't facts. True, they are facts, but I don't focus on that. I focus on something that points me in the right direction, points me in a direction to where I am supposed to be moving forward and not necessarily being handicapped under the thumb of something that was created that didn't necessarily have me in mind. So I think that is taking a holistic approach, I think when you look at proportionality, I think there are some people who want to focus on, acknowledge, address, talk about, so forth and so on. And they spend so much of their time focusing on this that they can't even see this. And then the other side of it is that there are some people who don't want to see this at all. And then they focus on this. And this right here, even though is more productive for them in nature, it does not necessarily address the compassion that we need to have for people who are still focusing on this. So I think the more holistic approach is recognizing, acknowledging, but still focusing over here.
And I think we're along the same lines, because I'm not, when I say the holistic, I'm saying don't try to tackle the whole thing at once,
Right.
but tackle this part and that part, so I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think when we talk about, people who therapize too much, I've learned, and this is just in my experience, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, I've learned that a lot of extremely educated folk, and I'm not talking about, anybody here. Some of us went through school and life at the same time, right? Some of us got degrees while still being in the Army, but we had a young adulthood. A lot of people spent a lot of their young adulthood in school and in some more school, and they come out as a full-grown adult finally entering into the world, right? And so when you take that into consideration, it makes me understand why a lot of our leaders, our senior leaders at that used to say things like that, because the only thing they had to rely on was by the book, by the numbers. They didn't have the personability aspect to their method. Maybe in time, maybe they learned it in time, when they became senior in rank. But I've seen that a lot when I dealing with soldiers as a young leader. I used to get lieutenants and captains that used to always be like, you're their leader. You don't need to be friends. And I'm not being friends with them, but I'm being personable with them. I want them to work for me here in the field and downrange, not just, robots. But I get the bottom book. The bottom books keep me from falling short. But the person allows me to get even deeper. So I do like it when you said, treat the person, not just the symptoms and condition, because that's an important aspect. So I agree there. Before we move on to the next question, I want to pull up because what Coach said and what his divine posted is going to lead right to the next point. She says, no, the victim mentality is a miserable state of being. I know what that felt like when I studied with a certain spiritual group. Right. And I think that it's important to see that aspect, to understand the mindset of the victim, because the next question is, what would you say the difference between victim to survivor is? And how could it change the narrative of your story and your experiences?
What's the difference in a victim and a survivor? I think focus, where your focus is. I think if your focus is destructive in nature, and what both parties have to look at what happened, but you see it from a different lens. If you see it like, okay, this happened, now how can I move forward? One wants to not move forward at all. And one says, hey, I'm going to move forward in spite of. So that's where the mentality creeps in. I think when you want to stay there and focus on the what happened and the this and that, yeah, we all can say what happened. We all can see what happened. We all can read about what happened. But am I going to allow this to hold me where I am? Just to hold me where I am and my feet in the sand and I'm staying right here? Or am I going to allow this to say, okay, this happened And because of this, I know that we have resilience and we have strength, and now we can move forward. Survivor, victim.
Very unpopular response here. Muddy the waters just a little bit. That's what I'm gonna do. I would say it's a number of differences. I can say I would first say maturity versus immaturity. I could also say entitlement versus responsibility. I think from a victim mentality, you are looking for the pity. You're looking for the help. You're looking for somebody to hoist you up. I'm sorry, you're looking for somebody to come and rescue you out of a situation. And a lot of times, let's be honest, a lot of times it's out of a situation that you created, to where a survivor, in most cases, have been through a thing to get to a thing. They recognize that they are, in essence, going to be the one that take responsibility for the life that they're living, and then make the necessary changes, that they need, not looking for somebody to do it for them, not looking for a handout, so forth and so on. I agree with what Roland said wholeheartedly. Is definitely focus, right? But then I also like to look at it, what is the so what of it all, right? It is focus. How do I get to the point of recognizing that it's focus? I need to also understand the behavior that precedes that focus. And how could it change the narrative of the story? Well, the victim tells the story because they're looking for somebody to sympathize with them. In most cases, the victim tells the story because they're looking for somebody to kind of help them in their situation. The survivor tells the story, from a different lens. They tell the story from the lens to where ultimately they recognize a thing. They talk about how they've made the necessary changes in the thing, and they talk about the end state of the thing. It points back to them owning the reality of their situation, and in a lot of cases also sharing a particular testimony. Their experiences change ultimately because they recognize that although my experiences may have facts in them, it is not the 100% totality of the truth. So they recognize that their experience is only a perspective of the truth. So now that person who is a survivor don't stay so stuck on their perspective of their reality. They're open to hearing other perspectives as well, because there may be some things that they didn't see in the midst of that situation.
I'm right there, kind of like the whole of what both of you have said. And I don't think it's new to this group of, as far as what I believe, what I see, and how all that other good stuff. And I only use that for a reason, because the first time someone came to me and tried to say, "Well, you know who the people of the Bible is," right? I was like, "And," right? Then I could see it. I started seeing that, on my own, but it didn't really make never minded me with where I was, right? And then, in about 2016, I had a group come to me, and it was just, this happened to us. You see this happened to us. You see this happened to us. And I was like, well, I don't, I had just grown. I was just growing out of that victim mindset because I was raised in it. On the statement you made earlier, the man holding me down. That's all I heard growing up. Why you joining the man's army? Why you doing this? And why, and I understood that. So I didn't want to hear that either. But when I begin to look for myself, I think is, some of the experiences, for what they use it for, to point back to prophecy, is cool. But what's the point? The point was a lesson learned. And I think the difference between victim and survivor says, when we come back from any mission, right, whether it's training or real life, when we come back from any mission, we immediately do an AR. And we go, what was supposed to happen? Right. And that's why I use that, because it was like, what was supposed to happen? We were supposed to keep the commandments of the Most High and not falter from them. Well, what did happen? Well, we profaned his sacraments. We profaned his priesthood. We profaned his sacrifice. We profaned his son when it came. Right. We did all of this. And so, so the byproduct is these things happen. Now, what do? We get back, like Lisa said, we get back to what he taught his children. Let's get back to what he told us to do. Because that's the only fix. And so when I look at the difference between survivor and victim says, this happened to me, let me continue to cry. There's no movement. Every time there's opportunity of movement, there's an excuse. Well, last time this happened. We tried that, but that's cool. But where do we go now? And that's why I think the survivor changes the aspect is, where do we move knowing this? Knowing that we made it this far. I think there was one song, is an old song back in the Baptist church, and I still love singing it to this day, right? And it's very simple. It just says, somehow I made it. Somehow I made it through it all. God brought me. And that's the mindset. I don't know how I made it, but I made it. But now what do I learn from it? And where do I go? I didn't know. It looked like Roller might have had like he was reaching for you, bro.
Trying to
I
find
was
that
looking to see if y'all about to tap in. Moving right on along. Next question. And I think we answered this question, but with everything that we were talking about, especially with the victim mindset, and I asked this kind of where we ended up going, right? Is this true for both individuals and community, or is there any slight differences when we talk about mindset?
I would say it's true, because a community is built up of individuals, and you got to start at the lowest level and work your way up. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to just, throw a shotgun blast out there and hit everybody. You got to do, sometimes you have to do one at a time. Sometimes you have to do small groups. Sometimes you have to start lower. You can't and I think that works. So I think, yes, it may be on a micro to macro scale, but yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I've been talking about this for a while now. If we want to change anything larger than the foundation, you have to go back and fix the foundation before you fix anything larger. So it's like pointless to talk about the community if you're not doing anything to fix the family. It's pointless to talk about the church if you're not doing anything to fix the community. It's pointless to talk about politics if you're not doing anything to fix the church. It all leads in succession. So the bottom line, if you want to understand the issue with politics, you want to understand the issue with church, you want to understand the issue with the community, look at the family. We do not respect what family means any longer.
So from the individual to the family to the community to the church to the politics.
Yep. That's why it's pointless to talk about those things. I don't participate. Like, there are very few people I talk politics with, but it's really a very short conversation because it's a waste of time. It's pointless.
Yeah. Right. Because what are we talking about it for? Is it something we're gonna do to fix? But and I think it just kind of goes down when we talk about politics in a certain sense doesn't have to be true for every community. It doesn't, and I mean by what's happening and how it affects. What do we do for our community? Who we, because I think one of the issues I've always had with politics, and this is still community, one of the issues I've always had with politics is nobody I ever voted for on any level came from where I live. So who is putting this person over this district when the self-interest of this district is probably in this district? And so we always go outside of community to find someone to help fix community. But if we fix self and we fix relationships and we fix families, we can fix communities. And then maybe we can get in the mindset to where, hey, road nephew, going to law school. The grandson going to law school. I would say nephew, but his nephew probably already graduated. And I'm joking, bro. But his grandson going. So he come back to the community, and he might have some. He might have some ideas that will benefit the community that he can take to that political level. And I think that's what the problem. We look at it wrong. What they need to do for us down here. No, we need to send one of us down here up there to speak on our behalf.
I think that's also the problem, because we expect to send somebody as a representative, and that's how they dupe the whole nation anyway. When it comes to, that's how they dupe this politics. Politics is the governance of the people. So we send people to govern the masses of the people, saying that this is our voice. And then when they don't say what we want them to say, it's like, okay, but we got to stand by. Well, you put them there, so shut up and listen to them then. If you put them there, shut up and listen. Like you put the orange dude there, hey, listen. You put the old dude there, listen. And you have a dependency on these people to be your voice. Instead of making your voice known where you are, you say, okay, let me shoot high. No, let's do this thing to where I'm involved. We don't want to be involved. We just want to send people. So we send people and expect. And we want to sit back and have our hands tied. No, if you have your hands to work here, it'll work. You ain't worried about what happens up top.
But see, that's the point that I'm making. If we had a better, more holistic understanding of what the family is supposed to be, and we did the right thing in the household, then when we look at the community would be saturated with individuals who have a good understanding of what the household is supposed to represent and how the community looks. Therefore, now you have multiple communities who look like that. When it comes down to state governance, those people are the ones who go into state governance. And you look at a community, you're probably going to take like 10, 15, 20 communities before you have one of them move into state governance. Well, who do you think eventually goes from state governance into federal governance? The people from the state governance. So that's what I'm saying. It starts with the family structure. When it got to the point that we avoided family values and things of that nature, according to what it should have been, then we just started adopting any old thing. And the things that we started adopting, those became the things that, started being put into place. And within the scope of the structure that exists, now you have the victim mentality. What does the victim mentality say? You're not doing anything to help me. Well, it's not their responsibility to do something to help you. It's supposed to be your responsibility to help the community helps the church turns around and helps the community. So it's supposed to be an evolution that's taking place within an internal system that feeds an external system. So now that external system can actually represent that system that they came from.
I like it. I said, let's get it together. One of the things, I'm gonna say this before I move on. One of the things that's been on my mind all the time is we have a lot of people who have a lot of good ideas about how to move back to community and how to get things right. But I think the problem is we expect people who don't want to get things right to be a part of that community. Move forward with the like-minded folk and leave who want to be left behind. That's the only, I'm not going to get theological, but that's the only real left behind. Leave those folks behind that want to stay behind and move forward with the community that is ready to move. I think that's the reason why, who was it that said, are you going to put talking about it into action? The reason why I never go into action, because we got a bunch of folk who ain't ready to put things into action. We keep trying to bring folk who want to stay in that mentality. I know you love her. I know you love him. I know you raised them, but they want to be left. And the only way to fix the community is to reshape it. Y'all know we can stay there. I know. So we're gonna shake it and roll on. Last question. Since we made it this far, let's get it to the last question. It says, given the two events Lisa went through, how could she apply lessons learned instead of trying to totally erase the memory?
How could she apply lessons learned? She could actually look at the facts in each situation. Look at what actually happened. Look at her reaction to what happened, and look at the fact that she's still here to talk about it. So now, instead of totally erasing it, she's like, man, yeah, this did happen. That did happen. I'm still here. It's like the Chinese kid on Hango. He say, but did you die? I know I can't say that out here. Whatever.
Too late.
But
I'm about to say, bro, we there.
hey,
I'm
it's
about
a
to
movie
talk to you
quote.
like I talked to Coach last podcast.
I can't unquote a movie quote, but and I think that this whole sensitivity thing is killing me. And I think that's what she needs to do. Look at the facts of each and every scenario and see how it could have gone different either way, good or bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at this question, there's two things come to mind. Number one, it is virtually impossible for you to erase a memory. That's for starters. But then number two, how could she apply lessons learned intentionally? When she becomes intentional about applying those lessons, then she will apply those lessons. And what do those lessons look like? Well, that gets into building the necessary level of resiliency that she needs to overcome those situations. And then if she really wants to progress in nature, go ahead and teach those lessons to other people who may be suffering from the same thing that you've been through. I think that's how you apply those lessons.
I agree. I love it. Um, look at the facts. Let's look at the whys if there's a why. And let's look at with the first event. For me, I get where Roland go, and I agree with what Roland said, but I don't think change happens by tucking tail and hiding. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna keep going. Keep going out, going out to eat. I'm gonna learn, like you said. I'm gonna read the room, learn my environment, know where I'm at, know where I'm going, you know, and move accordingly. But I'm not gonna tuck tail and hide. You know, we have the stories we have of some of our ancestors who endured, physical harm to make a statement. And those things being recorded, I believe, help shape a different mindset. And even people who think like that, they think twice before acting on that intrusive thought, because they understand the mindset or the repercussions that can come behind it. So, man, this conversation started really getting good as we got closer to the end. I do appreciate you all and you in the chat for keeping us lit, keeping us live. So with that said, I don't know what just happened. So with that said, we are at our bittersweet moment where we are moving over into our final thoughts.
Erasing painful memories. I think that it's no one-off when it comes to erasing painful memories. That's something that you actually have to work on. You have to do a daily work on it because, first of all, you have to self-reflect. You have to look at what actually happened to you. And did it happen to you the way you saw it? So now you have to be the one to think about what happened, think about what could have happened, think about what happened afterwards, and then take all of that and not dwell on things as you would to make it an anxious moment or whatever, but to simply say, man, I'm here. How did I get here? Why am I here? I'm here for a purpose. I think sometimes when you look at your purpose rather than the plan of it, you start to say, okay, my purpose is to be here, but you never looked at the plan. The plan was to go through this. And going through this, it's just adversity. It's just a stepping stone. And when you look at things as stepping stones, you tend to look at them as positives rather than negatives. I think we need to stop looking at everything that happens to us or whatever, however we frame that, as things that happen for us to move forward, for us to have teaching lessons, for us to be here to talk about. And not be so, if something happens to someone else, we can't just say, oh, well, it happened, get over it. No, I can't tell you to get over it because I think I've gotten over it, because I may be hardened to life. I may have had an upbringing that says, okay, it happened, get over it. You know, it's just another scar. Whereas that other person may have to go through it and learn from it a different lesson, and so that they can have a different teaching point. But when we start small and work on the small tasks first and build our way up, it's the same thing we can do in society and have our societal ills actually taken care of and handled before we go forward and start complaining about what is and what was.
I love it. I love it. Science-backed hack to erase painful memories. I kind of gave you a hint already. You know, you can't erase memories, right? So I guess what we are left with doing is erasing the pain. And this works regardless of what the memory is. It could be a bad breakup in a relationship. It could be, you know, like the example gave, it could be an accident. It could be loss of a loved one. It could be anything. It doesn't really matter what it is. Like I said earlier, when it comes down to the things that we experience, we tend to assign meaning to it. So here's what I want you to do. Get you a pen and a piece of paper and write it down. Write the event itself down, regardless of how you feel about it. Don't add any adjectives, adverbs, or superlatives to it. Just write it down, right? Then, after you write down the event, identify the facts that led up to that event, right? Are there facts that led up to this particular event? And I want you to capture as many facts as you can possibly capture, right? Because I think what you'll find is that in certain cases, depending upon what the event is, you may find that this event was actually predetermined. It starts to show itself before it revealed itself. Once you write down those facts, I want you to capture how you feel about the event and the facts that led up to that event. And then once you capture and listen, you got to be honest with yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. If you got to write down some colorful language, do that too. And then after you do that, I want you to write down why you feel the way you feel. Now we're starting to peel back the layers. Why you feel the way you feel. For every place that you wrote down how you feel, I want you to write down why. Because once you start identifying the why, I don't know isn't an answer, by the way. But once you start to identify the why, now you're really starting to peel back the layers of what's going on internal to you. Again, identify why you feel the way you feel about this particular thing. I guarantee you, when you start writing those things out and you start looking at it, you'll be like, wow, I see why I feel the way I feel. Now, the question that you have to entertain from that point on is what reality, different reality, by the way, what different reality is available for me to observe in the course of this situation? If you do those things, you'll start looking at things differently. And that's my final thought.
And all great points and great thoughts. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to my brothers conversate on this. For me, I would say the only fear that the scriptures speak of to me is the fear of the Lord, being the beginning of wisdom. Other than that, you know, I know things happen in our lives. I know situations have happened in our lives. I know things were said to us. People walked out. People passed on, and we have to live with that. But the question is, how do I choose to live with that? Some people have an automatic response, but for me, I had to get to a point in life where it's like, how do I want to live with these experiences? Do I want to live as a victim to my experiences, trapped, not allowed to move forward, not allowed? Because I'm telling you, when you allow it to become a fear, it actually takes control of you. It keeps you a certain way. The reason why you may get angry when people try to say things to you, it's because, hey, I'm trapped by this experience. And so I don't want to talk about this. Don't ask me questions about this. And so now my behavior is based upon my trauma. No, you should be able to choose how you want to live. Do I want to live triumphantly, or do I want to live in captivity? I choose triumph. So letting go of those things which are behind me so that I can press towards. Paul also said, let us lay aside every weight and sin that does so easily beset us. Right? He said weight and sin. So it's not just sin, but there's some weight. There's some things on our back. And it's keeping us from running the race. And it's keeping us from being able to push forward. And you get tired. You got to take a knee. But he says you have to endure to the end. So keep your head up. I hope this process helps somebody. I hope someone got some notes and could take this back to the shed, read over it, and we can move forward and we can grow together and be better as one. Whew. All right. Well, man, I think my brothers were on it tonight. I thank you, brothers, for all that you do always. Y'all make it easy to be here. So I love you, brothers. I know men don't say that in public, but I did on purpose. But I do love my brothers. I love you, chat. Y'all have been great. With that, are there any notes that we need to put out?
As always, Bible study on Sunday. We also have TikTok Live on Sunday that will be hosted by the Voice of Reason. So if you have not followed her on TikTok, just go and do a search for the Voice of Reason and follow. That way you'll be present when we go live. For those of you who are already connected in the group, as you know, we send it out anyway, so you'll get your invitation. Again, Tuesday is Coach's Corner. And then as always, next Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Hearts of Men. I won't be here. But, these gentlemen will still carry on an awesome show. So, yeah.
Thank you. If you didn't get it all, I don't know why I was looking for a role to have a response. It was notes. If you didn't get all that, please go ahead and scroll back through the chats. Sister Lisa Keys and Sister Krista were in the chat giving us all these notes all night. They've been putting out this information. So if you missed any of it, just go ahead and check out what they put in the chat. And let's stay active. Let's get after it so we can get, and the point, I'm gonna say this, the point of taking action in your life don't start when you gain enough information. It starts now. You got enough to start. You got resources at least to start. So that's all I got. Thank y'all. And listen, I always say be available for those you love. This mindset, this growth is a part of that availability, being mentally available. So please do it because the people you love depend on it. And we are out.